Men, when your wife cheats and you have kids, getting a DNA test should be mandatory.
Found out my wife of 12 years was cheating. Quietly did. DNA tests on my 2 kids. I never thought I would be writing this story. My wife and I have been married for 12 years. We have 2 kids, ages 10 and 7. I've been a mechanic at a local auto shop for 8 years. My wife works part-time at a daycare center. Everything seemed normal until about 6 months ago. My wife started acting different. She became more secretive with her phone. She would take it to the bathroom, keep it face down during dinner, and do things like that. My birthday came and went, and nothing special happened. The behavior continued. She started staying late at work more often. The daycare supposedly needed extra help with evening programs. When I asked her about it, she got defensive. She said I was being paranoid and that she was trying to earn extra money for the family. I backed off because I didn't want to seem controlling. One evening, I picked up our son from soccer practice. We drove past the daycare where my wife works. The parking lot was empty and all the lights were off. It was supposed to be one of those nights she was working late. I didn't say anything to my son, just drove home quietly. When my wife got home around 9 that night, I asked her how work went. She said it was busy and tiring. She complained about how demanding the parents were during pickup time. She was lying. The next few weeks, I was keeping an eye out, monitoring her actions and mannerisms. She was doing laundry more frequently. She took longer showers when she got home from these late work nights. Her clothes smelled different sometimes, like cigarettes mixed with some cologne. Cologne I would not wear. One night, I pretended to be asleep when she came home. She went straight to the bathroom and stayed in there for almost 45 minutes. I heard the shower running, then the blow dryer. She was on her phone, whispering. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but the way she was whispering was intimate. I stayed still and pretended to sleep. The next morning, she was extra nice to me, made my favorite breakfast, kissed me, had sex with me, then she left. It was fun, but it threw me off because I had been trying to be intimate with her for the last 2 months. That weekend, our neighbor mentioned seeing my wife at the grocery store on one of her supposed late work nights. The guy told me she was with some man. He said it casually, but he didn't think anything of it. But I knew then that my suspicions were right. Again, I started making mental notes of her patterns, which nights she claimed to work late, what time she actually came home, how she acted when she got back. I couldn't just accuse her without proof, and if she was cheating, I needed to know how long it had been going on. Most importantly, I needed to know if my kids were actually mine. Our youngest looks nothing like me. I always attributed it to him looking more like my wife's side of the family. But now I wasn't so sure. I decided I needed to get DNA tests done quietly. I also needed to figure out who this other man was. And then I needed to decide what I was going to do about it. I started planning my investigation carefully. The first thing I did was order 2 DNA test kits online. I used my work computer during lunch break, so there would be no trace on our home computer. I had them shipped to my buddy's house. My buddy has been my friend since high school, and I knew I could trust him. I told him I suspected my wife was cheating and wanted to get the kids tested. He didn't ask questions. He just said to let him know if I needed anything. The test kits arrived 3 days later. I picked them up from my buddy's house on my way home from work. The next morning, while my wife was in the shower, I quickly swabbed both kids' mouths. They thought it was some game. I told them I was checking if they were getting sick. I also swabbed my mouth and sealed everything up according to the instructions. I dropped the samples off at the post office during my lunch break. The results would take 2 weeks. Now I needed to focus on figuring out who the other man was. One Thursday evening, I was picking up pizza for dinner from a place near the mall. As I was walking back to my truck, I saw my wife's car in the parking lot of a restaurant next door. She was supposed to be working late that night. I walked closer and looked through the restaurant window. My wife was sitting at a table with the same man my neighbor had briefly described. He was tall, maybe 45 years old, and wore a suit. It looked like he had money. They held hands across the table, and she laughed at everything he said. I wanted to storm in there, but I had many things going through my mind, especially my kids. They looked like a couple who had been together for years. I took some pictures with my phone through the window. I went back to my truck and waited in the parking lot. After about an hour, they came out together. He walked her to her car, and they kissed before she got in. Not a friendly kiss, a romantic one. I took more pictures of them in the parking lot. I noticed the man was wearing a wedding ring, so he was married too. Before he drove away, I took one more picture of them together. The following week, I was getting groceries after work when I spotted them again. They were walking into a hotel that was close to the house. Boy, she was brave. I couldn't believe her. I quickly parked and used my phone to take pictures of them entering together. I took more pictures of them together from a distance. Now I had solid evidence. The following Saturday, I was at the hardware store when I saw the same man from the restaurant. He was with a woman and two young kids buying gardening supplies. I heard the woman call him by his first name and mention something about their insurance office. After they left, I asked the cashier if she knew who that was. She said he owns an insurance agency and lives in one of the nice neighborhoods about 30 minutes away. She mentioned that his wife volunteers at the school where her sister works. Now I knew what he did for work and had a general idea where he lived. The 2 weeks waiting for DNA results felt like the longest 2 weeks of my life. I tried to act normal around my wife and kids. Every time my wife touched me or said she loved me, I wanted to scream. Whenever I looked at my kids, I wondered if they were really mine. Finally, the results came back. I had them sent to my buddy's house again. I picked up the envelope on my way to work and sat in my truck in the parking lot. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Both kids were mine. The relief was overwhelming. At least my children were actually my children. But now I was even more angry at my wife. She was risking our family for an affair with a married man. It was time to make my move. I spent the weekend planning my next steps. Now that I knew the kids were mine, I felt more confident about moving forward. I needed more concrete evidence before confronting anyone. I also wanted to make sure both cheating spouses faced consequences. The next day, I made copies of everything: photos, hotel receipts, everything I found in my wife's purse. I put it all in a folder and made multiple copies. I also started looking into the AP's wife. The following week, I drove to the neighborhood where the cashier said he lived. I found the insurance agency's address online and drove by his office. The business sign had his full name on it. I looked up the insurance agency online and discovered he was the owner. I searched his name on some real estate websites and found a property listing from when he bought his house a few years ago. I drove by his house one Saturday morning. It was a big 2-story house with a nice yard. There was a woman outside gardening with 2 young kids playing nearby. His wife looked like a good person, someone who didn't deserve what was happening to her. I decided to approach the AP's wife first. I wanted her to know what was happening before I confronted my wife. I waited until the following Saturday and drove to their house. I saw her working in the front yard again. I parked and walked up to her. I told her I needed to speak with her about her husband and that she needed to know something important. She looked confused and asked what it was about. I told her it would be better if we could talk privately. She invited me to sit on her front porch while the kids played in the backyard. When I sat down with the AP's wife, I could tell she was nervous. She probably thought I would try to sell her insurance or something. I told her straight out that her husband was having an affair with my wife. her mouth flew open and she screamed, "No," and asked, "Are you sure?" I showed her the photos and explained how long this had been going on. Then she started crying right there on her porch. I felt terrible for her, but she needed to know. The AP's wife asked me what I was planning to do. I told her I would confront them, but wanted her to know first. She thanked me for telling her and said she needed time to process everything. I gave her my phone number and told her to call me if needed. That weekend, the AP's wife called me. She said she confronted her husband and he admitted everything. He claimed it was just a fling and that he would end it, but the AP's wife was done with him. She said she was filing for divorce and wanted to know if I would be a witness if needed. I told her absolutely. The AP's wife also mentioned that her husband had told her this wasn't his first affair. Apparently, he had cheated on her twice before, but she had forgiven him. This time was different because she had proof. Now it was time to deal with my wife. I decided to wait until the next time she claimed to be working late. I wanted to catch her in the lie directly. Wednesday night, she told me she had to stay late again. Instead of trying to follow her, I called the daycare directly. I asked to speak with my wife about picking up our son early the next day. The woman who answered said my wife wasn't working that evening. She said the daycare closed at 6 and there were no evening programs that week. I had her right where I wanted her. When my wife came home around 10 that night, I was upstairs getting ready for bed. She came into our bedroom and started her usual routine. She took off her work clothes, went to the bathroom, and started getting ready for her shower. I waited until she came back into the bedroom. Then I pulled out my phone and showed her one of my photos. It was the picture of her and the AP kissing in the restaurant parking lot. She froze when she saw it. She just gave me a blank stare at the phone. She couldn't say anything. It was time for the confrontation. My wife just stared at the photos for about 30 seconds. Then she looked at me and I could see her trying to figure out what to say. She started with the usual lies. It wasn't that serious. She could explain everything. It was just a friend from work. I let her keep talking, digging her own hole. Then I told her I knew she wasn't working late. I told her I called the daycare and they said she wasn't scheduled. I told her I had been watching her for weeks. I told her I knew exactly what was going on. Her whole story fell apart. She broke down crying and admitted to the affair. She said it started 4 months ago. The AP had come into the daycare to enroll his youngest child. They started talking and exchanged numbers. At first, it was just a friendly conversation. Then it became more personal. Then they started meeting for coffee, then dinner, then the hotel. She claimed she never meant for it to happen. She said she was unhappy in our marriage, and the AP made her feel special. I asked her if she loved him. She said she thought she did. That was all I needed to hear. I told her I wanted her out of the house by the weekend. I told her I was filing for divorce. I also told her that the AP's wife already knew everything. That surprised her. She asked if I had talked to the AP's wife. I said yes, and that the AP's wife was also filing for divorce. My wife got angry then. She said I had no right to interfere in their relationship. She said what happened between her and the AP was none of the AP's wife's business. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was mad at me for telling the other betrayed spouse. The next few days were horrible. My wife packed her things and temporarily moved in with one of her friends. The AP stayed at a hotel because his wife kicked him out too. I had to tell the kids that mommy and daddy were getting divorced. That was the hardest conversation I've ever had. My 10-year-old asked if it was his fault. I assured him it had nothing to do with him or his brother. I told them that sometimes adults make bad choices that hurt families. I promised them I would always be their dad and take care of them. My 7-year-old didn't understand what was happening. He just kept asking when mommy was coming home. I filed for divorce the following Monday. My lawyer said I had a strong case because of the adultery in our state that actually matters for things like custody and asset division. The AP's wife and I stayed in touch throughout our respective divorce proceedings. We became friends in a weird way. Both of us were dealing with the same betrayal. Both of us were trying to rebuild our lives. The AP's wife's divorce went through first. She got primary custody of their kids and a significant portion of the AP's assets. She also got alimony for 5 years. The AP had to move to a small apartment and only gets to see his kids every other weekend. My divorce took a little longer because my wife tried to fight it. She claimed I was being vindictive and that her affair didn't mean she was a bad mother. The judge didn't see it that way. I got primary custody of both boys. My wife gets them every other weekend and one evening during the week. She has to pay me child support because I make less money than she does. She ended up getting a full-time job after the divorce. The most satisfying part was the division of assets. Because of the adultery, she only got 30% of our shared property. I kept the house and most of our savings. The AP and my ex-wife tried to make their relationship work after both divorces, but it fell apart within a year. The AP's wife heard through mutual friends that the AP was already seeing someone new. My ex-wife moved to another state to be closer to her family. She still calls the boys regularly, but only sees them during school breaks. It's been 2 years since everything happened. The boys and I have settled into a good routine. They're doing well in school and seem happy. When they bring her up, we talk about their mom, but I never badmouth her. The AP's wife and I are still friends. We help each other out when needed, and our kids have become friends too. Sometimes we all do activities together, like going to baseball games or having barbecues. Nothing romantic, just two families that went through similar situations. Looking back, I'm glad I handled things the way I did. I could have just confronted my wife without getting evidence. I could have ignored the whole thing and tried to work it out. But getting the DNA test gave me peace of mind about my children, and gathering evidence protected me in the divorce. Most importantly, telling the AP's wife was the right thing to do. She deserved to know the truth about her marriage. My advice to anyone going through something similar is to be smart about it. Get evidence before making accusations. Protect yourself legally and financially. And remember that the children are the most important thing. They didn't ask for any of this mess. TLDR, found out wife was cheating with a married man, got DNA tests on the kids, gathered evidence, told the other man's wife. Both marriages ended in divorce. Kids are doing well.